Hello guys, it is me again, it's HorrorFan34, and welcome back to another video. And I figured I'd do my first official franchise review. So this will be the start of a series of reviews where I'll be reviewing a horror franchise. And I figured, for my first horror franchise I'm going to review, I could have picked so many of them. I could have done the Jason movies, the Freddy movies, Halloween, or Critters. I could have done the Scream movies. I could have done the Psycho films. I could have done things like that. I will review those horror franchises at some point down the road, but I figured I review this horror franchise first. And I figured I review the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. So this will be the start of a series of reviews where I will be reviewing the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So I'll be reviewing from the original all the way until Leatherface, which is the newest Texas Chainsaw movie. So why not start the first review with, of course, the original classic, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is a 1974 film directed by Tobe Hooper. I still think, in my opinion, this is Tobe Hooper's masterpiece. In my opinion, I think that this is without a doubt still my favorite Tobe Hooper film. I love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre a lot. And Tobe Hooper, as a director, I really do enjoy. So I'm really excited to be starting, like I said before, I'm really excited to be reviewing my first horror franchise. And I'll be doing those other horror franchises at some point down the road. But I figured I'd review the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise as my first horror series of reviews. And I'll be reviewing other horror movies as well that are not just franchises. But going on to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, the film that started the whole Chainsaw Massacre series, the film that started it all, the original Tobe Hooper classic. And Tobe Hooper as a director, I really do enjoy. Poltergeist, The Mangler, just a lot of other stuff that he did. Of course, Tobe Hooper is no longer with us anymore, which is a shame. It's a shame that a lot of people in this movie are no longer with us anymore. Of course, Gunnar Hansen no longer with us anymore. Marilyn Burns, who played Sally, she's no longer with us. Paul Bertain, who was Franklin, he's no longer with us either. Of course, Tobe Hooper's no longer with us anymore either. So, a lot of people from this film have passed away, which is sad. But and also Jim Seedale, who played the cook, he's no longer with us anymore either. So. But what more can I say about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre that hasn't been said before? It's a classic film. I love the whole idea of it being set in the 70s. I love the look of the film. The way that the people are dressed and things like that. You can tell it screams 70s. And the plot is very simple. You have a group of friends going out to see a property, and it ends up being next door to the crazy family of Leatherface. And my bulb just went out, if you haven't noticed that. Hopefully that flickers back on, but maybe it's haunted. I don't know. Talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but and then of course they start getting picked off one by one. And the thing with this film that really works really well is that this film didn't have to rely on gore. Just the idea sells it, the reactions of the characters, the intensity, the atmosphere. I think this is a prime example of a film that didn't need gore to be scary. And it works really well. There are a couple of shots of gore here and there, and there goes the light again. But there's a couple shots of gore here and there, but compared to the remake and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and things like that, they were much more gorier than this film. This film goes more for a serious, more of a atmospheric kind of movie. And I think the film works really, really well. I mean, it's a classic movie. It's one of my personal favorite horror films. I love this movie. I think the cast does a great job. Marilyn Burns is Sally, and Paul Bertain is Franklin. You also have the other characters like Pam, Kirk, Jerry, and of course you can't forget John Larroquette at the very beginning doing the whole narration, the opening crawl, the opening narration. Of course, John Larroquette, who would, I think they would also bring back to do the remake, which I thought was cool, that they got John Larroquette back for that. And of course, I always remember John Larroquette as well from Richie Rich, one of my favorite movies growing up. He was the main villain in Richie Rich. But the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a classic movie. It's one of my personal favorite horror films of all time. It's one of my favorite horror films of the 70s. I think Gunnar Hansen is the true Leatherface. He is the true Leatherface in my opinion. I mean, no other person could be Leatherface other than Gunnar Hansen. I mean, I think the other guys do a great job, you know, like R.A. Mihailoff, Bill Johnson, Andrew Bernarski, and things like that. But Gunnar Hansen, to me, is always going to be Leatherface. He is the true Leatherface, and he does a great job. I love the family in this one, where it's just Leatherface, the cook, the hitchhiker, and of course Grandpa. Edwin Neal, of course, is the crazed hitchhiker. Jim Seadow is the cook. Got Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface, and John Dugan as Grandpa. And just a lot of really bizarre scenes. And I remember, like, you know, the very first time I ever saw this film. First time I ever saw this film, I think I was my freshman year of high school. I know that. I remember it was the first time I ever saw this film. I remember the day I watched it with my buddy. I slept over his house that day on a weekend. I think it was on a Friday, and I slept over his house that night. And before that, we got a pizza and went to Best Buy. And I remember that was back when Best Buy sold a lot of other, like, older stuff. Like, nowadays they don't sell this stuff anymore. But they had the 2-disc Ultimate Edition of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for like $10. And I picked it up, and that was like the first time I ever saw the film. And I remember that, you know, the whole ending where Leatherface is swinging the chainsaw around all angry and things like that. And then it just stops and cuts to black, and then the credits roll. And I remember, like, me and my buddy looked at each other, and we were kind of like, what in the hell did we just watch? And I think that's what makes this film work so well, because we were, like, both creeped out. I mean, I was creeped out, he was creeped out, and that's why we looked at each other and said, you know, what the hell did we just watch? I mean, that's what makes this film so effective. It's creepy, it's atmospheric, and I think this is a prime example of a film that didn't need to rely on gore. You know, there's a couple of gore shots here and there, but this relies more on the intensity, the atmosphere, the characters, and things like that. Even though this film doesn't have a lot of gore in it, it's still a very disturbing movie because of the atmosphere, the intensity, and things like that. Like the whole scene where Leatherface opens up the steel door and then he drags the guy in and slams it. Really effective. It makes a chill go down your spine because you know there's no turning back and things like that. And the whole style of the film that by Tobe Hooper is so well done. It's very detailed, very stylized, very 70s. Really has a great gritty feel to it. And I think that's what makes this film work really, really well. It's directed very well by Tobe Hooper. And, you know, just a really crazy idea about a cannibalistic family and things like that. I mean, what more can I say about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre? It's a classic film. And, of course, you know, you have the great characters of Marilyn Burns and Paul Bertain and the other characters as well. You know, have you ever been by to a slaughterhouse? My father owns it. Yeah. Franklin, you know, Paul Bertain, who plays Franklin's a great character in this. And I remember the first time I ever saw this film, his death really did shock me. I mean, his death scene, that's a really good jump scare where him and Marilyn Burns are looking through the woods with the flashlight, and then all of a sudden, you know, Leatherface pops up out of nowhere and kills, Franklin, but you don't see anything because you don't see any gore or anything, but Marilyn Burns' reaction, her face sells it, the intensity sells it, and I think that's why this film works. The intensity, the atmosphere, the reactions of the characters, the whole intensity of the entire craziness that's going on, and things like that. I mean, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an all-time classic. And if you haven't seen this film, if you're a big horror fan, you definitely got to check this out. So that is pretty much it for my review for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Alright guys, take care.